All right, today we're going to go on a little journey together. Not to some faraway place, but into a whole different way of looking at the world. We're going to be exploring qualitative research. Now, this is a method that's not about counting things, but about understanding the really rich, messy, and deeply human experiences that make us who we are. So, let's dive in.
Think about it for a second. We are drowning in data, right? Numbers, stats, they tell us what's going on. A stock goes up, an election poll shifts. But those numbers always leave this giant hanging question mark. Why? To get to the why, we have to go deeper than the numbers. We have to step into the world of meaning and context and, most importantly, stories.
So this slide really breaks down the two main flavors of research. On one side, you've got quantitative research. Think of this as the classic scientist approach. It believes there's one single, measurable reality out there, and its job is to find the universal laws. If X happens, then Y will happen. It's all about control and measurement. But then, on the other side, you have qualitative research. This is totally different. It's interpretive. It believes that we all create our own meanings and realities. So its goal isn't to control things, but to observe and understand what's happening in the real world in its natural, messy setting.
Okay, so if you're a qualitative researcher, how in the world do you navigate this complex landscape of human meaning? Well, you use something that's kind of like a compass. It's made up of 4 key guiding principles. Now, these aren't a rigid map telling you exactly where to go, but they absolutely help you stay pointed in the right direction.
And here they are. These 4 points are the big questions a researcher has to ask themselves before they even take the first step. You've got to figure out your scope, be ready to adapt, decide what your role is going to be, and get crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve. Let's break each one down. First up, boundaries. This is all about deciding on the scope of your project. Are you going to use a microscope to get a super detailed look at one single person's experience? Or are you going to use a wide-angle lens to get a feel for a much larger group and see some broader patterns? Basically, you have to decide if you're painting an intimate portrait or mapping a huge landscape.
Next is one of my favorite parts, design flexibility. See, unlike a lot of other research that follows a super strict plan, qualitative research is, well, it's alive. A researcher might start with a plan, for sure, but they have to be totally open to what they find. It's what's called an emergent design, because new ideas and questions can pop up that completely change the focus of the study. It's like having a destination for a road trip, but being willing to take a detour down a cool-looking side road.
Then there's the research relationship. This is all about what hat the researcher is going to wear. Are they going to be a distant, objective observer, kind of a fly on the wall using structured interviews to keep everything consistent? Or are they going to be right there in the mix, having open conversations, maybe even becoming a participant observer to really understand a group from the inside out? That choice changes everything.
And finally, we have the intended outcome. What's the end game here? What are you trying to do? Is the goal just to paint a really vivid picture of something, or to interpret why it's happening? Some research is just about reflecting on the world as it is. But then there's another type called action research that wants to actually get in there and change things, like a study that works with a neighborhood to build and test a new community garden program.
Okay, so we've got our compass. Now, let's make all this theory feel a little more real. We're going to walk down one of the most personal and powerful paths in qualitative research, narrative research. Just let that sink in. This gets right to the soul of it. The whole point of narrative research is to dive deep into a person's life. You're not trying to find some universal law. You're trying to honor and understand their unique, one-of-a-kind experience by listening to their stories. So how does this actually play out? Well, the process is incredibly focused and personal. First, a researcher usually zooms in on just 1 or 2 people. Then, they gather their stories, maybe through long interviews or by reading their journals. After that, they write about those experiences, and they often put them in chronological order to build a story, to really see how that person's understanding of their life unfolded over time.
But, just saying you're telling a story isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Even within this one approach, there are actually a bunch of different ways a researcher can go about capturing someone's story. Let's run through these real quick. A biographical study is exactly what it sounds like. The researcher writes the story of someone else's life. And autoethnography flips that completely. That's when a person writes their own story, connecting their personal journey to bigger cultural ideas. A life history tries to capture the whole shebang, an entire life story. A personal experience story zooms way in on just a single important event, like a person's first day on a new job.
And finally, oral history is super cool. It's about gathering stories from lots of people who all experience the same big event and weaving their voices together.
So we've traveled through the principles. We've walked down a specific path, which brings us to the biggest question of all. What's the destination? Why do these individual stories, gathered so carefully, actually matter?
And this, right here, is the big takeaway. Numbers can give us the facts, but they can never tell us what it feels like to be human. Qualitative research, especially narrative research, gives us a real, thoughtful framework for how to listen. It's how we get access to those profound personal meanings and incredible stories that numbers alone will never, ever be able to capture.
And that really just leaves us with one last thing to think about. Every single one of us is made up of stories, of wins, of losses, of moments that changed absolutely everything. So as we wrap this up, just ask yourself, what's the important story in your life that's just waiting to be truly heard and understood?